Hello, and thank you for being with us today. It is delightful to be with all of you. We are looking at this subject of reclaiming inner power, and it presumes that we had it and then we lost it. And therefore, we want it back again. In fact, you can never really desire something that you never had. And in terms of spirituality, we're also thinking not about something that we may have lost in our lifetime, but it may go back before that. And so we have to look at the self in a larger, wider context and think about the self as a spiritual being who has passed through many incarnations. And during that process, things happened. And energy, as you know, when it's applied, when it's put into motion, there is a reduction in the amount of available energy. And inner power is a form of energy, the energy of the soul, which is expressed in all the different situations we find ourselves in life. And over a long period of time, something has happened to our energy. And in that sense, when we want to reclaim it, we're not really talking about reclaiming power in the usual sense, physical, social sense, but is something much deeper. However, before we get into that, we need to take a look at this subject in a little bit of an analytical way. First of all, what do we mean by power? As you know, there is this expression, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this refers to political power and maybe also financial power and some other forms of power that are greatly desired in the world today. And we're also talking about social power and what it means to be in your power as an individual in the social environment, your family environment, your work environment, the environment of your friend circle, and the larger, wider community that you are part of. And this is something that depends very much on your life experience from early childhood onwards. And here we take a look at some of the impacts of psychological traumas and so on. Because I think it's realistic to say that there are very few people who grew up in an ideal way with perfect parents and good education in favorable circumstances all around. The world we live in is really not like that, which means every single one of us have been through a number of situations from early childhood onwards which compromised our inner power in different ways. Some people, their inner power was severely compromised, and so they have a lot of inner work to do. Some people, their experiences of life were manageable and they had a good family support system, so they were able to have clarity and weather the storms quite well. But even then, this would be a minority of people. And so when we are looking at inner power, we find that there's actually quite a lot of problems around the question of inner power. And it's a very subtle, intangible thing, inner power, and quite difficult to distinguish between whether you're really in your power or whether you are under an illusion of being powerful because what you have is a big ego and you tell yourself that that's power. Or it could also be that you are actually quite powerful, but the messages that you have received growing up and from the people around you have been unfavorable and have created a situation where you have suppressed yourself, you have acquired doubt in yourself, and so your power is there, but it has become dormant. And in that case, it's a question of waking it up and then returning to your rightful state of being. So these are really quite subtle things to be able to discern in oneself, but this is really what we're looking at in this intensive today. I think that anyone who engages in or is curious about spiritual practice, one of the reasons is because they would like to be more stable, more steady, more in their power than they are. And so this is a very strong motivating force. But also there is this larger question that we all face, and that is, who am I? Do you really know who you are? I don't think so. Most people really have no clue. And so the matter of identity is closely related to the matter of reclaiming inner power, because if you are clear about your identity, then it becomes very easy to empower yourself around that. So we also need to look at identity. And from a spiritual point of view, we always say that your identity is as a spiritual being. You're a being of light. You have a body. You play a role. And that's your local identity, you can say, is your persona, your performance. But behind that, there's another identity, which is not much talked about, but which is, I think, more real, more true. And this is the identity that really needs to be empowered. And we also have to look at how this gets disempowered and got disempowered, and what are all the games associated with that process. So you can see that as we start to analyze the whole question of reclaiming our inner power, we are looking at a number of different areas, and we'll open them all up and then put it all together and see, okay, what is my actual lack of power? What is the extent of it? And what measures do I need to take in the process of reclaiming my inner power? So your external identity is connected with your profession, your position in the family, your social position in the society, how much money you have, how much property you have. So these are what I call the 4 Ps that really make a huge impact on people and make a difference to their sense of inner power or their sense of self. And these 4 Ps, they are power is, of course, the first one, power, property, position, and protection. So you may make yourself feel powerful by what your position is in the organization or community that you find yourself in. So if you have a high rank, and people look at you with a lot of respect and regard because of your rank, then that will make you feel powerful. So position is a very important aspect of this. And then power in that position means that your word is heard by people. If you say something, people will do what you say. You will not be ignored. And this gives you a feeling of power, and you will be considered a powerful individual because people compare themselves with you. Are you more powerful than them or less powerful than them? The more powerful you are considered to be, the more respect you will be accorded. And in an elected position, for example, in political power, if you have an election, you win an election, then it will be said that, oh, you are in power. And if you lose the election, people will look at you in a different way, and you will be sidelined, and you will be not in power. And people will not accord you the respect and regard that they accorded to you when you were in power. So because people want respect and regard, they crave power. And why do they want these things? Why do they crave power? We have to say, because they're weak. So there's a question that I sometimes ask people to really consider. Is it better to be a powerful soul in a weak position, or is it better to be a weak soul in a powerful position? And when you put it like that, you know, it's obvious. The answer is it's better to be a powerful soul in a weak position. Because anyway, if you're a powerful soul, you're in your power and you will get into a powerful position because it is a corollary of being a powerful soul. But sometimes circumstances may be such that your position is weak, and it may be for a long period of time, but being a powerful soul, you will not be put out by that position of weakness. So that then is an example of real personal power. And someone who feels themselves to be a powerful soul, they will not be much concerned about position. If it's high, if it's low, great, you know, either way, it doesn't change who I am. But if you need power and you desire the trappings of power and you want the position, the regard, the respect, the money, all the things that go with it, then that's a sign that you are a weak soul and you are dependent on the signs of power. But these are external signs which come and go. And if they're there, you feel okay. And if they're not there, you feel really bad. And that is not what you want to be. That is not called reclaiming our inner power. So when we're talking about reclaiming inner power, it's very much to do with understanding what inner power is. So inner power comes from your contact with the higher power, the supreme being, the supreme soul, which is the source of power. Inner power also comes from your actions, your karma. So whatever pure karma you have done, it will create favorable circumstances, and it will also intensify and increase your personal inner power. The other thing which intensifies your personal inner power is what is called blessings of other people. That is an energy. So if you have lived a life where you have benefited people in all sorts of different ways over a long period of time, this energy of people feeling favorable towards you, people feeling that you have done something good for you, this also acts as an energy, which is one of the component parts of inner power. Let's take a look for a moment at what disempowers an individual and how this process of disempowerment begins in childhood and is very, very common in most cultures, particularly cultures which are very patriarchal and really quite, in a way, violent towards children. So the most effective way to disempower an individual is socialization. And this type of socialization is very commonly thought of as a good way to raise a child, but it's beginning to be challenged because it's clearly not as good as it is thought to be. So from infancy, girls and boys are indoctrinated by their upbringing as to what is good and what is bad. That means they're taught values. Such and such is good characteristic, such and such is bad characteristic. You should be good in this and this particular way. You should not be bad in that particular way. So they are indoctrinated in this way until they accept these principles as irrefutable. So they've totally gone in, and whether they're true or not is not under question because they have accepted it as true without being able to check it. Then the next stage in this process of indoctrination and disempowerment is to accuse the individual of non-compliance. For example, a child will be taught that people with a lot of ego are bad, and then they will accuse that child of having a lot of ego. They may or may not, but they'll be accused of it. They will be told that in many cases, if they show signs of independence, self-actualization, and self-confidence, that that's actually ego and that that's bad. Actually, these things are good. And so the conscience on the inside of that child will say, it doesn't feel bad, but all these external moral authorities are telling me that I'm egotistical. Therefore, what does the child do? You have to please these people or become their enemies. So as a child, it's safer to please them and accept that they are right. And if you go the other way, then you'll be in for a very hard time. So most people would prefer to diminish themselves and go along with these great external moral authorities, which would include parents, religious leaders, educators, and so on. So here is where the process goes. And in patriarchal cultures, these positive attributes will be classified as vices, and particularly women, any female who shows any signs of these will be put down, punished, taunted, etc., for having these attributes until that girl or woman gives away her power and remains disempowered. This is how it works. This is how it's done all over the world, and it works every time. She then is under the control of those who are in power over her, and she may be used or exploited in various ways. This is extremely common practice. So the main method of attaining success in this strategy of disempowering others is to ensure that the person develops such a level of doubt in themselves that they can be easily manipulated and they will never challenge those who exert control over them. Now, the big question is, how do you recover from this? Well, first of all, you have to be very strong to withstand this kind of treatment, indoctrination, and manipulation. You also have to be emotionally independent and require nothing from the controlling group of people. In many cases, especially for women, they're financially dependent, so they are dependent on those people for getting their physical needs met: food, clothing, transportation, any kind of entertainment or anything. And so in that situation, they are forced into a kind of survival situation. So to be free from that, you have to be able to tolerate mental, physical, emotional, psychological, and social pain, rejection, and stigmatization, which may be even to an extreme degree. The more free you are, the more powerful you are, the more the people who want to bring you under their control will apply pressure and pain and hardship to you. And so this is a tricky situation. So in order to be free, your support system has to be something quite other than the social system in which you find yourself. This means your support system must be non-physical. So if you think of yourself as a non-physical being to start with, then it becomes possible for you to develop a non-physical support system. And this is really key in this process of reclaiming your inner power. So we can call this spiritual support system. And spiritual is not physical. Spiritual doesn't mean religious, it's different. Now, most people are not strong like this. They're really not. Do you know anybody this strong? Hard to find someone like this. So if a person isn't strong, what do? They will develop complex ego defense systems. They may be quite weak, but they will put on a show of being really tough, hard, emotionally stable, maybe aggressive, assertive, all of this. And it becomes like a hard shell. And behind that, the weakness is you can't actually get through and hit that weak place until the systems break down. So what happens is these complex defense mechanisms develop into character defects. So people who are exposed to that kind of conditioning, which is the overwhelming majority of people, they're forced to develop these survival skills, often at a young age, which become their ego defense mechanisms and character defects as they get older and operate in the world. Typically, those people will become abusers, like the people who abused them, or they will become manipulative, like the people who manipulated them, or they may diminish themselves, like the people who diminished them. So they will take in what was done to them and they will do it to themselves. And at the same time, they will create this production of this performance, which is fake. And that is actually what ego is. So this makes them weak. And they may be aggressive or passive, but in terms of their inner power, they are actually weak. Now, let's have a look at the indicators of a person who does have inner power. What are the signs, or you can say, what are the sanskaras of somebody who has inner power? And they don't necessarily have external power. They may not have position, they may not have property, they may not have money, they may not have any kind of political or social or economic power, and they may not have much in the way of protection, but they have inner power. So what does a person like that look like? I think the first thing we would say about someone like that is that they have this characteristic of being invincible. It doesn't matter what you do to them, they bounce back. Invincibility, good one. They are impassive, not easily emotionally aroused. One very important characteristic is they're unimpressed. Because a person who's in their power will not be impressed by performances that hide people's deep inner weakness, because they can see through it. It's a characteristic of their power. They are very intuitive and they can see what's going on. They tend also to be quite solitary. They are fine just by themselves. They do not need anyone or anything. They may be very socially pleasant and engaging, but they are not dependent on someone to prop them up. So a person with inner power is someone who is really self-dependent or solitary. And this, of course, enables them to pursue the spiritual side of their life, which is their relationship with the divine. The person in their inner power is honest. They have nothing to hide. They don't have to pretend. What you see is what you get. This is it. Now, they might be deep, they might be complex, but they are straight, honest. They don't have any twisted motivations, you can say. A person like that is also brave and courageous, because really there is a lot that stacks up against them. So certainly bravery is an important characteristic. Flexibility is very important because circumstances change and you have to flex with them. Sometimes you're alone, sometimes you're with lots of people, sometimes center stage, sometimes on the side, whatever it is, you can adjust. So this power of flexibility and adjustment is a really good sign of someone with inner power. And they are confident. You know who you are, and whether somebody else knows who you are or not doesn't really matter. Someone sees you, that's good. Someone looks at you through so many veils and filters that they cannot see you, or they may project onto you and look at the projection because they cannot see you or they will not see you. But someone in their inner power gets it, and they are not bothered by it. They are confident. Faith in the self is a key characteristic of the person with inner power. And of course, they recognize themselves. You know who you are. You do not diminish yourself. Why would you do that? You do not have to look bigger than what you are. You understand what you are and who you are, and that is fine for you. That's a person who is real. When you're real and in your inner power, all of that is, it goes together. And the person who has inner power, they will be true to themselves. There are many circumstances where, you know, someone may try to buy you or threaten you or, you know, deceive you in some way, try and find out what you want and manipulate you. But a person who's in their inner power, they cannot be bought because their relationship with their conscience is absolute and strong. And the voice of conscience speaks all the time to that individual, and they will not go against their conscience. They may be flexible, they may adjust to whoever's around, but there'll be a limit which cannot be crossed, and they have principles, they have their boundaries, and that's that. And if somebody doesn't like it, too bad. And they may have to pay a high price for that, but they're rich. They have inner power, means you have the wealth of a kind of currency of moral strength, which is enormous. And it doesn't matter what you have to lose or what price you have to pay, but you will not compromise on who you are and go against your conscience. And the person with inner power is strong enough to carry it off. So that's really good. We want that. The person with inner power is independent. They can't be controlled, they can't be coerced, they can't be bought, they can't be intimidated. They're free, and this is really good. Person with inner power can be visible when needed, can be invisible when needed. They're not dependent on being center stage all the time, and they're also not afraid to come under the spotlight if it comes to that. Now, the person with inner power is a free and noble spirit. They serve their ideals as far as possible, but they remain realistic and practical. And definitely they do not compromise on their integrity. So this is, I think this is what we all aspire to, but then I created this checklist so that we can see now, am I like this? You know, do I like this? Because maybe we can't say I'm like this totally, but yeah, I like to be like this. And if you have this as your aspiration, then it means you have something very tangible to work towards, and you can always see when you go against that principle, which you say, yeah, this is my espoused value. I am wanting to be a person like this because I know that this is what I am deep down. This is the reality of me. And maybe I got bent out of shape through one thing or another, but bringing myself back to my core inner power is quite manageable because you can see it clearly and because you recognize it and you know that this is the real me. So this is a very powerful thing. Well, we have looked at some quite important points, but we want to make them go deep inside. We want to take possession of what they mean so that we can actually acquire some inner power. So for this, in this intensive, it's important for us to take some time for meditation. So let us take a few minutes to sit quiet and go inside, go deep inside, really feel yourself in the center of the forehead, which is the seat of the soul. This is where my real inner power must be accumulated. So turn your attention within. Go to that deeper, quiet place of light, which is beyond the material. And consider the self to be a pure, peaceful, powerful being of light. This is my real self, a point of light with consciousness, with power. And I was disconnected from this real me. So to get inner power, I reconnect with my real self. I am not my body or what people see me as. I am not my past, my mistakes, or any of the catastrophes that I passed through. I'm something else, something deeper. And I go to that space within where I, the light, reside. I am meeting myself. I am the light. I am truly powerful. Feel your own power. The power to be who you really are. And give yourself the space to be quiet with the self. I am in my power. invisible. I am beautiful, real, perfect. I am returning to what I was, and I feel the energy, the power of the Spirit coming to me from a higher source. Can you feel that? Turn the mind beyond this world to a dimension of light in another space. There is the source, the higher power, the supreme being, the source, the force. Just open yourself to this and allow that light, those waves of energy to penetrate your being and fill you with that strength to be the real you. It is a healing energy. That heals the wounds and scars where you were weakened. It fills the empty spaces in your being where you were drained or hurt. Feel that energy restoring you to your original purity, your original brightness, your original power. And hold this space, this quiet inner state, while you absorb more light, more power. Then gently bring yourself back to the everyday world of sights and sounds, circumstances, people, places, and keep that light and power with yourself. Come to this space again and again to replenish your spirit. whenever you want. Thank you. Now, let's take a look at some questions. I think that mostly you would have a notebook with you and pencil. So there are some questions I'd like you to take down and think about during the next few minutes and also afterwards when the intensive is all over, because they're quite deep questions and they help us to look at the connection between the kind of thoughts and internal questions that arise and our old patterns, which make us quite vulnerable to things that disempower us. So first question, what about people who are aggressive, who look powerful, who are quite intimidating people? How should I be with people like that? And you may be a person like that yourself, but every so often we all encounter someone who's more aggressive, more intimidating, and maybe you are someone who is quite quiet, quite non-intimidating, and there are intimidating people around you or in positions of power in your work environment or in your community or your family, and you have to deal with them because there they are. So think about this. When you are faced with somebody who is intimidating, ask yourself, what does it make you feel? And what does it make you do internally? Do you immediately respond to their intimidating aura by getting intimidated? Because there's a difference between getting intimidated by an intimidating person and not getting intimidated by an intimidating person. It really doesn't depend on them. It really depends on you. And there are people who don't even know that they're intimidating. There are people who are truly powerful. And if you come across someone who really is powerful, but you are not in your power and you're not a powerful person, so you would feel the energy of that other person and it might make you feel a bit disconcerted. It might make you feel that you compare yourself with them. You compare yourself unfavorably with them, and that makes you become weak in front of them. And then you are not really operating out of who you are, but you go into old patterns which are connected with maybe other times in your life where you were in intimidating situations and you got caught in it, trapped by it, taken over by it, overwhelmed by it. And that becomes an old pattern which is triggered as soon as you find yourself in front of an intimidating person, and it triggers reactions which may be almost unconscious, or they may be completely unconscious. So ask yourself this question with the aim to identify, what do you generally feel when you're in front of an intimidating person. And I think you can also ask yourself, if you're a female, a woman, how do you feel about a man who is intimidating you? How do you feel about a woman who is intimidating? There may be people who are trying to intimidate you, or there may be people who are just intimidating, but they're not trying to intimidate you. They just are intimidating to you because in comparison with them, you feel intimidated because you're really not in your power. And it makes you feel very uncomfortable because when you're not in your power, then you are actually dominated by or under the control of your sanskaras. Sanskaras is like patterns, your old patterns. And it can be that your reaction to an intimidating person or an intimidating situation is you become aggressive. There is the expression fight or flight. So in an intimidating situation, or more than that, when you're around somebody who you feel intimidated by, does it make you aggressive? Or does it make you afraid? Or does it paralyze you? Because there's also a third one, which is fight, flight, and then freeze. Some people, they just freeze. They just get paralyzed by intimidating situations. And all of this goes back to quite possibly childhood situations where something like this had occurred and you were very small, you didn't have any of these social skills, you were out of your depth, and so you had a reaction which then became a habit pattern that stayed with you for a long, long time. And now is the time to release yourself from that by being more proactive than reactive. But the first thing is to identify, what does that situation make you feel? And it can vary depending on the type of situation. So these are very important questions to ask yourself around the matter of someone who intimidates you. It could be also a circumstance that's intimidating. For example, some people, they get very intimidated by exams or tests or interviews. And nowadays, it's very fashionable to call people for job interviews and be really intimidating towards them, because I don't know why they think it's a good idea to do that, but they do. And maybe they're looking for people who handle intimidating situations by being aggressive. Maybe they're looking for that. But to me, that's not really a person who's in their power. When you're in an intimidating situation which triggers one of these reactions, then it's an opportunity to go inside, to go deep into yourself and really decide, are you really afraid of it? Or is it just a habit that was put upon you that's not really real? It's kind of come from the outside and it got imposed on you and you took it on. But when you go deep inside, you discover that actually you're not really afraid of this, but it triggers something which is not really you, you know? And part of the process of meditation is to reach that inner place where you can tell the difference between if you're really affected by something or if you've just been trained to be affected by something. An example comes to mind, which is dogs. Now, in different cultures, children are trained to think of dogs as friendly pets, and they learn how to interact with dogs, and they're not afraid of dogs. But then there are other situations, other cultures where children are actually trained to dislike dogs, to be afraid of them, to consider them to be very dangerous and aggressive. And so whether or not the dog is dangerous or aggressive, they have been trained, they have been conditioned to feel this way, but it doesn't come from them, it comes from how they were trained. And this is something that you can undo as soon as you recognize what it is and that you had actually bought into an idea which really wasn't true. So that's an example. Dogs is quite a good example. It's very important to really learn how to handle difficult people, difficult situations, and sometimes instead of learning how to handle them, people just become intimidated, and it prevents them from really developing an ability to be easy with those situations, which are not as intimidating as you are taught to believe they are. So this is an important thing to look at. Okay, another question. What if I am weak, disempowered, and I meet someone who is in their power and it disconcerts me? What does it make you feel? It might make you feel jealous. Jealousy is a very powerful emotion which gets aroused when someone is actually not in their power. And when you see someone who is in their power, who is okay, and you compare yourself to them unfavorably, it will really make you open up this characteristic of jealousy, and it will make you want to damage that person who is really very good, who is being quite nice to you, and yet you don't like them because you feel they're better than you and you don't want to acknowledge their good qualities, but rather you get taken over by this jealous feeling. But you will not acknowledge to yourself that I am jealous. No. What will you do? You will almost go on to automatic pilot, and you will be aggressive, you will be rude, you will say bad things about that person when you get the opportunity. If there is a situation where you are in a better circumstance than they are for any reason, you will put them down, you will try to hurt their feelings, and all of this is actually an attribute of not being in your power. And jealousy is a very powerful characteristic that the jealous person usually denies. So we have to also become aware that, am I in denial of the reality that I am jealous? and I don't like this person because they are actually better than me in the respect of being stable in their own inner power, and it makes me really dislike them, so that this is a real thing. Jealousy is something that controls a lot of people, and yet it is quite difficult to identify. And when you are jealous of someone, to recognize it, to acknowledge it, and to admit it to yourself and to another person, or maybe to the person that you're jealous of, so that you can bring the relationship onto a better footing. But this is a lot of inner work. And the big step is to recognize that you are actually under the influence of jealousy, and it's nothing to do with the other person. You will project onto that other person. You will see them as a threat to you. You will find all their faults. You will not be able to have a good quality relationship with them. And things can really become quite bad, and you may even do some serious harm to that person, and that would be negative karma, and you will have to pay the price. So it's a really important question to consider, and all of it is an indicator that you are disempowered, you're weak, and you need to come into your power. And this is very important. And that means you need to meditate, you need to study, and you need to write about your feelings and really look at it, because your paper that you write on can be quite a good mirror and let you know, hey, self, wait a minute, what am I doing? I'm letting myself get carried away with jealousy, and jealousy means I'm weak. It doesn't mean anything negative about the person you're jealous of. So a good and important question to look at. Another question: what if I am a truly powerful soul and people find me hard to manage? They react to me and they do whatever they can to diminish me. This is an interesting thing that happens to people who really are powerful and maybe who don't realize how powerful they are, because basically everybody thinks, well, I'm normal and I'm just me, and you wouldn't really go around thinking, am I powerful, am I weak? But yet it may be that you are really a powerful soul, and that your power disturbs people because they feel uncomfortable around you, because your aura is so big and your light is so bright, and you are just kind of innocent of it. You just think, that's normal, that's me. And you really don't know why other people try to put you down, or they try to make you diminish yourself, or they try to make you doubt yourself, or they say unkind things to you, and then you feel confused, or you wonder what's going on here. Why don't they like me? How come they are reacting like this? And so then you have to understand yourself. You have to recognize that, I am a powerful soul, And that's just the way it is. And I do have a powerful, big aura. And so I have to be sensitive to other people getting overwhelmed by it, or a feeling that I'm some kind of an energy that's too much, and that they maybe can't handle it, or they maybe didn't know how to interpret it. And so there are all kinds of strange, uncomfortable interactions. And so one of the things that's really very important is you have to be able to understand yourself. If you're weak, understand that. If you're powerful, understand that. And I feel that a lot of the people who are really interested in developing themselves spiritually are actually quite powerful already, but they don't necessarily realize it. And obviously, at the moment, in this present period of time, all souls are relatively depleted. And so you may be more powerful than you think, but you don't realize it. And you think that, oh, I need to empower myself. And so it's just very important to be able to assess yourself accurately. And this is really quite difficult. You remember that checklist that I was mentioning earlier. And if you go through that checklist and you tick off all of these points, then you can understand that, yeah, you are quite a powerful soul. You may get disempowered in certain situations, but deep down, you really are a powerful soul. And so then you need to understand that, and then you need to understand, okay, what is the best way for a powerful soul to function around people who are not so powerful, so that you don't intimidate them, and that you can adjust yourself, adjust your light, adjust your power, so that people are comfortable with you. And that's a very, very subtle kind of inner work, but it is part of the process of understanding your power and learning how to use your power in a way that doesn't overwhelm other people. So this is also a question to consider. You know, some people are just really powerful and they just don't realize. Another question which is connected with that, people who are different, you know, you might have this feeling, oh, I'm different. What if everyone is against me? I'm different. I know who I am and what I want. Perhaps I'm eccentric and not like everyone else, and they don't like that, and they react against me by being aggressive to me. What should I do? How should I handle this? Well, a lot of us are different. In the process of trying to understand ourselves, I'm sure a lot of us go through and look at different psychological profiles and try to understand, what category do I fit in? And there are people who just don't fit. And, you know, we are taught that it's important to fit in, to blend in, to be like everyone else, and so on. But maybe you're not. Maybe you are really different. Maybe you are one of a kind. And people try to categorize you, and you don't fit in their categories, and they get irritated with you, and then you feel that you're being different means being not okay. And when you do that, when you feel that, when you interpret it in that way, then there's a tendency to diminish the self and give away your power. And this is not necessary. I think it's quite important to be able to claim your right to be who you are, and to assert that if you do not fit into a category that someone's trying to put you into, you need to be able to stand up for yourself and to say what you are and who you are and define yourself. Because it is said, if you do not position yourself, then others will position you. And sometimes you're so used to others positioning you and identifying you as who you are not, and that they are just unable to see you for who you are, that you just get fed up with it and don't bother. But no, that's important to not do that. It's quite important to position the self. This is me. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I don't do. This is what my boundaries are. This is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not willing to do. Really define yourself. And obviously, we are in a constant state of evolution. And it may be that as you evolve, the way that you define yourself will change. And in that case, then you redefine yourself and you express yourself and you clarify who you are, what you will do, what you won't do, what you go with, what you don't go with, because otherwise there is a tendency to just go along with what other people want you to be, but you're not that. And that is giving away your power. And even if people very forcefully try to push you into this category or that category that you don't fit in, you need to sit down with yourself and take time. And in fact, it's really a good idea to sit down with pencil and paper and really try to describe yourself, that who you are and what you are and what you like and what you don't like and what's important to you and what your values are, not what they're supposed to be, not what they should be, not what people tell you they have to be, but really honestly what you are. And even it's quite a good idea to get a page and divide the paper into two and really classify your good qualities, what your shortcomings are. There may be characteristics of you that are disturbing to people, but which are not bad. They're disturbing to people because those people are jealous that you have them. They're disturbing to people because they don't expect you to have that particular configuration of characteristics. Maybe they can't figure you out, but maybe you can figure yourself out. So these are important questions. And another question is, what if I really don't fit in with everyone else? To what extent should I bend and adjust and adapt? And to what extent should I draw a line and say, I will adapt to this extent, and beyond that, I'm not being true to myself? So we need to also construct our boundaries, because that is also a way of clarifying who you are, so that people then know where they are with you. Sometimes if a person doesn't know where they are with you because you're just trying to fit in and bend and adjust and so on, that really doesn't work because they just do not know who you are or what you are. So in the desire to please people or to be acceptable or something like that, you may really go against yourself. And this is a way in which you throw away your power and lose contact and lose sight of who you are. So this is something we mustn't do. So thank you very much. And let us see what further questions anyone might have. Om Shanti.